This episode of the Nerd Corporation podcast may contain spoilers and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, heroes. This is Stan Lee coming at you. Want you to know, Marvel has always been and always will be a reflection of the world right outside our window. That world may change and evolve, but the one thing that will never change is the way we tell our stories of heroism. Those stories have room for everyone, regardless of their race, gender, religion, or color of their skin. The only things we don't have room for are hatred, intolerance, and bigotry. That man next to you, he's your brother. That woman over there, she's your sister. And that kid walking by, hey, who knows? He may have the proportionate strength of a spider. We're all part of one big family, the human family, and we all come together in the body of Marvel. And you're part of that family. You're part of the Marvel universe that moves ever upward and onward to greater glory. In other words, Excelsior.
What up, everybody? It's Thursday, and you know what that means.
Another day of darkness and despair with no way out.
Jesus. Okay. No, but thanks for fucking bringing the mood down.
Well, no, but yeah.
I mean, outside of the podcast, maybe.
Not in here, no.
Not in here.
Did Stephanie Meyer turn out another poorly written piece of shit?
Stop it. Don't say those kind of things, because they end up happening.
I mean, like, it's a widely known fact that
She can't write.
like, people don't like those stories, right? Like,
It's not the stories, it's that she is a fucking shitty writer.
I never read the books.
I've only read snippets because back in the day, my ex-wife, she was reading the series, and when she would get, too tired but still wanted to continue, she would,
Have you read them to
ask
her?
me to read them to her.
I was just guessing.
And I would, because it was fun, it was cute.
Damn,
but
that's love right there.
the whole time that this is happening, as I'm reading this, the only thought in my head is, oh my god, this is the worst thing I've ever read. This is horrible.
Unintelligible dross.
My daughter could write a better, more detailed, more evocative story than that chick could.
So I have
Sign her up. Let's do this.
I know, right?
I have a question for you guys. I found out recently that I'm deeply obsessed with this man named Junji Ito. He's this incredibly...
Don't stalk him. Don't follow him home.
No. Well, I mean, he's on the other side of the world, so it'd be really hard for me to do
that's...
that.
If you're a stalker, you better...
The internet's a crazy place.
If you're a stalker, you better be prepared to be dedicated, man.
Yeah, because
come on.
That doesn't stop love. Distance
Yeah.
doesn't stop love.
I know. He's a really prolific horror manga artist in Japan.
You showed us that anime.
Don't watch the anime.
Yeah?
I went into it. I recommended it to you guys because I watched the two very best episodes, and then I watched the entire anime, and I was like,
What are we talking about again?
it's that anime that I recommended
Junji.
last time, the Junji Ito collection,
Oh,
the scary story one.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm reading because I bought two of his books, and they're fucking gigantic books. They're this big. But the thing is that my question is to you guys, is that they're comic books, they're manga. Mm-hmm. Does that count as a book?
Yeah.
As reading?
Absolutely.
If there's words in a story, then...
It's 800 pages, and I read half of it last night.
Holy shit.
I mean, but at the same time, I'm sitting here going I'm really speeding through this. But I'm it's also, I'm turning pages a lot quicker because it's not 100% text.
When I bought the, I don't know where it is now, but when I was working at Convergys, I bought the Walking Dead first compendium, which was the first 6 books into one gorgeous looking hardcover book.
Yeah.
And I read all of them in a shift. So I know what you mean when you just okay, you read 3 parts to one conversation and then you're on the next page. It goes really fast.
I'll have to bring it over next time we record because they're super fucking cool books. But that's not only my question to you guys, but my question to the audience at large is do you look at manga or comic books to be actual reading.
Absolutely.
I do, and they're called graphic novels for a reason. It totally.
Well, I mean, and the thing is that this guy is incredibly compelling, and so I'm like, this feels like, and you know, like he puts so much detail into each panel, it almost kind of feels like that makes up for the.
Well, yeah, because you're not just reading the words; you're taking in everything that's going on that page.
And I mean,
they're
this
all
isn't
representations of like it's pretty much. It's taking all of the descriptors out of novels. You know, he sits on his chair and he furrows his brow at you, and then he says blah blah blah. You know what I mean? The furrowing and the sitting is there for you to visually see. You know what I mean? Half of my vocabulary I owe to comic books. Yeah. Like and graphic novels.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at, like, for example, something like Stephen King, who's one of my favorite writers, he goes into incredible detail about every aspect of a character.
Yeah.
Which is going to take like 20, 30 pages for him. And it's all in one little cell.
You know, you being
book,
a big horror fan, I'll probably end up buying you one of his books because they're super cheap, so don't think anything of it. But
I mean, even if it was expensive, I'd let you.
I mean, you being a big horror fan, I feel like you would really love it because you know the same detail that he puts into words, I feel like this Ito guy puts into his panels.
Hell yeah!
I watched this interview with him, and he's so fucking fascinating. He's like one of the coolest dudes I've ever like actually looked into. But yeah, there's this one where it's kind of just a bunch of different. Like little short stories.
Oh, okay.
So, and I think that one's only like $20, so maybe Christmas gift.
Oh yeah.
I had this idea. I went home and I was like, I know what to get the nerds. I know what to get them all for Christmas. I was like, I'm gonna get all of them Persona 5. Ooh. And then I went and looked at GameStop, and that game is $50 right now. So and I'm like, ooh, maybe not.
Yeah,
I don't like them that much.
It's time again to start my journey to the Indigo Plateau and become the very best.
That no one ever was?
Yeah.
Do they play that song in the game at all?
Oh. That was a show theme.
So
well, I know, but they did that commercial. They did that ad on Facebook where it's like they added a revamped version, and I'm like, if this isn't in the game, I'm not buying it.
No, but like when we go into our impressions later, like I'll talk about it, but
I actually did not buy it. I bought it for Angela, and Angela has been playing it, but I have not been. I've been playing the fucking bejesus out of this game called Castlevania Rondo of Blood, and it's tight as fuck.
Oh yeah,
this game's fucking rad, dude.
Tight as fuck, boy.
Fast as fuck, boy.
That's what I was channeling, but
anyway. None of those things. It's none of those things. It is podcast day, and it's a pretty sad one. Welcome to season 2, episode 14, Excelsior, the life and legend of Stan Lee. I went to Wikipedia and I kind of just took all of their information, and that's what we're going to be reading out for you guys. What a fascinating life this man led, and I am so sad that he's gone. So sad.
You know, when you told me that he had passed away, I've been reflecting on him a lot, you know, and me not being the big comic booky guy, as much as you guys are, you know, I started thinking about it a lot. This guy, him dying, would be like Miyamoto dying for me.
Absolutely.
Like, he's kind of the guy that made everything work and inspired everyone else, and he is, I don't think we would have half of the shit. Like, I really do believe that his work kind of splintered off into just about everything else.
Absolutely.
Like, his whole, and there was this sentiment that I heard on a podcast I was listening to a little while back, where a guy, and it kind of stuck with me, where he's like, you know, if we were all gone tomorrow, you know, and in some cataclysmic event, you know, we're just all dead, right?
Please.
But any day now.
That's me whistling and waiting for that to happen.
But like, we were just gone, but all of our shit was still here, you know, relics of past, and some, you know, be it extraterrestrial or some new age of, you know, being came down and saw all this shit. They would think that we worship these people, like these characters that he created, because they're fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would be. Yeah, they would be like the idols of past. You know what I mean? And those beings that would come would think that these were real people.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, there was a man that was a spider, and there was, a man with one eye that shot beams out of an ocular device. Like, you know what I mean? And I wouldn't mind that.
We don't even have those.
Yeah.
Well, and that's something that a lot of, especially back in the day, but like a lot of historians do, even with our own past cultures, you know, like Romans and Greeks and everything. Yeah. Like the first thing that they want to do, if they find something that they can't find like a practical application for, their first thing to go to is, must have been religious.
Yeah.
This must have been a religious thing. And like, because how do you explain, you know, our adoration of people like Stan Lee or, you know, these characters that we love? You know, like that's like all of our pop figures, all of our bobbleheads. Like, what purpose does that serve? How would you explain that purpose apart from, well, I just really love it.
Yeah, I just really think this is cool.
I like looking at them.
You know, but like, if you're gone and can't explain, well, it's just aesthetic. I just like it. It's something that means something to me. Yeah. Like, if we're all gone and there's no one to explain what purpose that served, people are gonna go, oh well, it's an idol that they worshipped, or you know, like that's
I found
something.
Like what is it? These tiny men in boxes. Should I let them out?
Don't you dare! Who knows what they're gonna do? This one has knives. Let's leave it there.
They like find somebody that somehow survived, and he's just like, no, don't open those.
Don't do it.
NRFB.
Don't do it.
Well, let's get on to the nerd news.
I know we're not really touching a lot on the news here because we got a lot to talk about, but I felt like this was a thing that had to be discussed. Mm-hmm. Sony has confirmed that next year it will not be at E3.
That is crazy.
They're being quoted, as the industry evolves, Sony Interactive Entertainment continues to look for inventive opportunities to engage the community, they said in a statement to GameSpot. PlayStation fans mean the world to us, and we will always want to innovate, think differently, and experiment with new ways to delight gamers. As a result, we have decided not to participate in E3 in 2019. We are exploring new and familiar ways to engage our community and in 2019, and can't wait to share our plans with you. I am just, at this point, curious as to what the fuck they're gonna do.
They're also quoted as making the jack-off hand gesture.
The dismissive wank.
It's actually in here, but I couldn't read that.
Yeah. I have a theory that I'm sticking with.
All right.
I think they believe that E3 is going the way of the dodo, and they want to focus on PSX being their only thing. That's
what I was thinking, and I was thinking that, like, to add to that, I was thinking that maybe they might try their hand at like an interactive PSX. You know what I mean? Like have its convention, but also have like.
Because I was gonna say Xbox had their little conference. Bless their hearts. You know. I mean,
you should have done nothing at all. You fuck.
But like, I feel like, I mean, each Nintendo company.
All of the Nintendo companies out there.
Sound like my mother.
Yeah, Nintendo.
I'd be playing my PlayStation. Put the Nintendo away. It's not a Nintendo. You know what I mean.
I can't pause online, Mom. But I was gonna say, like, each company is sounding like they're just, well, no other company is confirmed that they won't be there, but it sounds like they might each be just focusing more on their, like, you've got your Nintendo Direct and whatever the hell Microsoft does now, and then Sony's PSX, and then
so maybe they might.
I kind of feel like everybody's gonna kind of go the way of having their own fucking convention. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Well, yeah, it'd be easier.
Money to do
I'm not trying to put Xbox down in any way, but I did just get rid of an entire Xbox One to get Pokemon Let's Go, and I have no regrets.
Can I say that is a world fucking record for how fast you got that thing?
I know.
As compared to how fast you sold it.
I didn't sell it. I took it right to GameStop. But I called them up and I was like, y'all got any more of them Pokemon Let's Go Eevees? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, you got the Pokeball one? They're like, yeah, we have that. I'm like, I'll be down.
So
Hold it.
So I do want to give a piece of nerd news, which, I hope isn't sadness on sadness, but I mean, it is. So here it goes. The creator of Princess Bride, William Goldman, also passed away.
Wow.
And it's just so sad. And so it's been a really fucking shitty recent, week?
Yeah.
Or a little more than a week?
This week has just been exhausting for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he was so great at just, displaying how ridiculous we are sometimes in our emotions and things like that. And he was great. And so it's another really sad thing.
Well, shit. I guess we should get on to the man of the hour, Stan motherfucking Lee. And that was his middle name.
Mm-hmm.
Motherfucking
Yeah.
Was it?
No, Samuel L. Jackson had it legally changed for him.
You can't walk around with that Disney-ass name.
Before we start, what are your guys' favorite Stan Lee created characters?
I would have to go with not just one specific character, but because I was doing my research, because I'm like, okay, there's so goddamn many things that he's done. Like, I got to narrow this down a little bit.
Right.
And I think my earliest probably interaction, and it recently brought it back when we did our Retromania on it, was not just the animated series, but the X-Men. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
He created the X-Men, and just not even just the animated series, but just like any X-Men in general. Like, it's like the first foray into the cartoon, and I even read a little bit of the comics when I was a kid. Like, I didn't start reading a lot of comics when I was a kid, but like I saw the show X-Men and I was like, oh man, there's like these things called comic books. I got to check these out. So I convinced my parents to get me some of them, and I started reading those. And I was talking about how I have this vague memory of reading this like novel in elementary school about Wolverine, and I have not been able to find any information about it, but I swear to God, it was out there where he was like, it was an alternate storyline where he was like already, like he was born like Wolverine, right? And he like discovered the stuff that he had like as he was growing up. Like,
Oh, okay.
like he was in gym class and he tripped and fell and broke his nose, and he noticed like within seconds it had like healed itself, and he was like, what the hell's going on? You know?
Wow.
But like I don't know what that's called, and I have this memory of it, but like the earliest stuff I can remember, I'd have to go with X-Men.
Cool.
Well, and that like, points out some of Stan Lee's not just his genius, but his social conscience too. I mean, the whole point of the X-Men was, just
Addressing bigotry.
yeah, not judging people who are different than you, because whether they're the same or not, good people exist, shitty people exist.
Also, don't fuck with mutants,
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't do that.
because they got theirs.
Yeah. Mine, I would have to say, just because of the cinematic universe and how he was always popping up in it, I have to go with Uatu.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, it's, and I never really thought about it before. I mean, obviously, I was, just like everyone else, figured that he was a Watcher, and that's why he kept popping up and having all those cameos.
Right.
But, like, while I was thinking about, what character I was going to pick, I was like, oh my god, he's not just a Watcher. He is his own creation. He is Uatu.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what he's going for with all these cameos. Like,
Yeah.
that just struck me as so fucking awesome and so Stan Lee,
That's
Wasn't one of his cameos being a Watcher?
Well, yeah, and that's when they basically finally said, okay, all right, he's a Watcher. Yeah, you're all right. But yeah, no, I don't think he was just a Watcher. I think he was specifically a Uatu.
That's awesome.
I really had to dig deep and find something that because it's so hard to pick and choose, which one, because they're all incredibly likable. I really love the Spider-Man universe, but I know that that's your pick, so I'll let you do that. But I'm going to take one specific person out of your universe and fuck you if you don't want me to. Because I love this guy, man. J. Jonah Jameson is probably like one of my favorite Marvel characters
He's the most
ever.
endearingly curmudgeon piece of shit ever.
I mean, he's so...
J-Unit!
He's so fucking New York.
J. Jonah Jameson.
He's so New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is, dude.
And I find like I would never want to be near one at all, but I love New York people, just their way of life, and he's like the perfect embodiment of a New Yorker, like fast talking, like no bullshit, like, you know, if I need you, do what I need you to do, and then get the hell out of my way as quickly as possible.
All business, all work.
And God damn it if I don't get pictures of Spider-Man really fast.
And on top of that note, dude, J.K. Simmons fucking nailed
Oh,
J. Jonah
Absolutely.
Jameson.
Is he from New York? Is he a New
I don't know.
Because holy hell, you would think like he
Yeah.
was
I mean, he's
fucking
also
born
an
in-
actor.
Yeah.
Well,
Not only that, but
at the
you
same
see
time,
that-
it seems so natural to him. You know what I mean?
You
Yeah.
see the pictures are in the cartoon of J. Jonah Jameson even, and it's like they got the look like
Oh yeah,
right
they
on.
nailed that shit.
Yeah, dude. When
Super.
I heard them announcing a Spider-Man, like that's who I immediately thought about. Like there were only two of them that I actually thought that I like wanted or whatever, and they actually
like as J. Jonah Jameson,
Yeah.
or just
no, like just there are like two characters.
oh
Like I wanted J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, and I wanted Sam Jackson as Nick Fury.
oh yeah.
And I was just like, hell yeah! Like there couldn't be one more better casted.
Oh, for real.
Mine, like Cole was saying, is Spider-Man. I grew up on Spider-Man. Like I played the video games growing up, like from the Nintendo on, and I watched the animated series. I read a bunch of his books. Spider-Man was one of the first underdog superheroes that I wanted to just like, oh, you've got this, man. Like, don't give up. Like,
Yeah.
Because Stan Lee, above all else, is great at expressing turmoil in characters.
Yeah.
Just like their inner shit.
Yeah.
Well, and especially because I mean, up to that point, you know, most of the superheroes were like these infallible, you know, just monoliths of power and you know, Boy Scouted type, you know, Superman type people, you know. And so it was really cool to all of a sudden have much more relatable characters.
It was okay to show weakness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Stan Lee did that.
And
he created that.
not to mention Maximum Carnage was one of the greatest video games ever made.
Absolutely.
It came in the red cartridge. I loved that game.
So fucking
And I
cool.
also was going to say, when you were talking about the video games and everything, I remember one year for Christmas, I got a Sega Genesis, and I got an X-Men game on it, and I played that game over and over again, even after I beat it. Because it was one of those where you just go through it was like arcade, you go through the levels, and then if you die, you go all the way back. But once you beat it, like, that's pretty much it. And I just kept going through it and through it and through it. It's one of my favorite games ever.
Such a cool game. Stan Lee was an American comic book writer, editor, and publisher who was active from the 1940s to the 2010s. He rose through the ranks of a family-run business to become Marvel Comics' primary creative leader for 2 decades, leading its expansion from a small division of a publishing house to a multimedia corporation that has dominated the comics industry. In a collaboration with others at Marvel, particularly co-writer and artist Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, he co-created numerous popular fictional characters, including superheroes like Spider-Man, the X-Men, Iron Man, Thor, the Hulk, the Fantastic Four, Black Panther, Daredevil, Doctor Strange, and Ant-Man. Daredevil's actually another one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah.
And, yes, God, he's just the man.
Wasn't Fantastic Four was like the first thing that he did, wasn't it?
Pretty much.
Well,
Like in the 80s or whatever?
Well, he did work for Captain America. Like, that was where his
Okay.
thing came up. But I think the Fantastic Four was like the first family
Yeah.
of Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Lee pioneered a more naturalistic approach to writing superhero comics in the 1960s, and in the 1970s he challenged the restrictions of the Comics Code Authority, indirectly leading to the changes in its policies. In the 1980s he pursued development of Marvel properties in other media with mixed results. Following his retirement in Marvel in the 1990s, he remained a public figurehead for the company and frequently made cameo appearances in movies based on Marvel characters, on which he received an honorary executive producer credit. Meanwhile, he continued independent creative ventures into his 90s until his death in 2018. Lee was inducted in the comic book industry's Will Eisner Award Hall of Fame in 1994 and the Jack Kirby Hall of Fame in 1995. He received the NEA's National Medal of Arts in 2008.
Stanley Martin Lieber was born on December 28, 1922 in Manhattan, New York City, in the apartment of his Romanian-born Jewish immigrant parents, Celia and Jack Lieber, at the corner of West 98th Street and West End Avenue in Manhattan. His father, trained as a dress cutter, worked only sporadically after the Great Depression, and the family moved further uptown to Fort Washington Avenue in Washington Heights, Manhattan. Lee had one younger brother named Larry Lieber. He said in 2006 that as a child he was influenced by books and movies, particularly those with Errol Flynn playing heroic roles. By the time Lee was in his teens, the family was living in an apartment at 1720 University Avenue in the Bronx. Lee described it as a third-floor apartment facing out back. Lee and his brother shared the bedroom while their parents slept on a fold-out couch.
So, he came from humble beginnings, is what I guess.
Could you imagine just even going to that vicinity of where that apartment was and just like standing in that area?
I mean, I feel like one of those places has got to be turned into some sort of monument,
Memorial.
Yeah, memorial, monument, whatever, like...
Well, yeah, I assume the apartment's long gone, but like, just like...
Yeah, like that
standing
site.
in that area and just
Yeah.
like, dude, this is where he grew up. Lee attended DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx. In his youth, Lee enjoyed writing and entertained dreams of one day writing the great American novel. He said that in his youth he worked such part-time jobs as writing obituaries for a news service and press releases for the National Tuberculosis Center, delivering sandwiches for the Jack May Pharmacy to offices in Rockefeller Center, working as an office boy for a trouser manufacturer, ushering the Rivoli Theater on Broadway, and selling subscriptions to the New York Herald Tribune newspaper. He graduated from high school early, aged 16 and a half in 1939, and joined the WPA Federal Theater Project.
I saw a little video clip of him talking about writing obituaries, and it was so weird because he mentioned, like, you know how when a celebrity dies, like, bam, there's already an obit.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah, no, what they would do is they would pay to have you write an obituary for them so that it would be like ready to go.
Huh.
Like, how weird is that?
That is crazy.
Isn't that just nuts?
Was I the only one that, as a kid, giggled every time somebody said the word obituary because it had bitch in it?
I was there. No, I was there.
I felt bad saying it. I was like, I shouldn't say this word.
It's for the same reason that I can't ever not giggle when someone says ball peen hammer.
Yeah. It's the ball and the peen.
Got the ball peen there?
Let me get the ball peen to smash this with.
You do that.
Ball and peen?
You have both? What?
Yeah,
You're not going to put them both in there, are you?
Isn't that normal?
No! No!
You have both. With the help of his uncle Robbie Solomon, Lee became an assistant in 1939 at the New Timely Comics division of Pulp magazine and comic book publisher Martin Goodman's company. Timely, by the 1960s, would evolve into Marvel Comics. Lee, whose cousin Jean was Goodman's wife, was formally hired by Timely editor Joe Simon. His duties were prosaic at first. Quote, in those days, the artists dipped the pen in ink, so I had to make sure the inkwells were filled, end quote. Lee recalled in 2009, quote, I went down and got them their lunch. I did proofreading. I erased the pencils from the finished pages for them, end quote. Marshalling his childhood ambition to be a writer, young Stanley Lieber made his comic book debut with the text filler Captain America Foils the Traitor's Revenge in Captain America Comics number 3, cover dated 1941, using the pseudonym Stan Lee, which years later he would adopt as his legal name.
Lee later explained in his autobiography and numerous other sources that because of the low social status of comic books, he was so embarrassed that he used a pen name so that nobody would associate his real name with comics when he someday wrote the Great American Novel. This initial story also introduced Captain America's trademark ricocheting shield toss. He graduated from writing filler to actual comics with a backup feature, Headline Hunter Foreign Correspondent, 2 issues later. Lee's first superhero co-creation was the Destroyer in Mystics comic number 6, which happened in August 1941. Other characters he co-created during this period fans and historians call the Golden Age of comic books include Jack Frost debuting in USA Comics number 1, which was in August 1941 as well, and Father Time debuting in Captain America Comics number 6, also appearing in August 1941.
When Simon and his creative partner Jack Kirby left late in 1941, following a dispute with Goodman, the 30-year-old publisher installed Lee, just under 19 years old, as interim editor. The youngster showed a knack for the business that led him to remain as the comic books division's editor-in-chief, as well as art director for much of that time, until 1972, when he would succeed Goodman as publisher. Lee entered the United States Army in early 1942 and served within the U.S. as a member of the Signal Corps, repairing telegraph poles and other communications equipment. He was later transferred to the Training Film Division, where he worked writing manuals, training films, slogans, and occasionally cartooning. His military classification, he says, was playwright. He adds that only 9 men in the U.S. Army were ever given that title.
And you know, fun fact, in that same group that he was in of playwrights, Dr. Seuss.
Oh.
No shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
So him and Dr. Seuss worked together.
Has these films that he's worked on at all, have they surfaced at all?
I don't know.
That'd be really fucking cool if those came up. And I mean, like, yeah, it's got to be really hard to restore those, but that'd be really fucking cool to see.
So you're in the Army now, see?
It's time to be in the Army.
Vincent Fago, editor of Timely's animation comics section, which put out humor and funny animal comics, filled in until Lee returned from his World War II military service in 1945. Lee was inducted into the Signal Corps Regimental Association and was given honorary membership of the 2nd Battalion of 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment out of Joint Base Lewis McChord at the 2017 Emerald City Comic-Con for his prior service. In the mid-1950s, by which time the company was now generally known as Atlas Comics, Lee wrote stories in a variety of genres, including romance, westerns, humor, science fiction, medieval adventure, horror, and suspense. In the 1950s, Lee teamed up with his comic book colleague Dan DiCarlo to produce the syndicated newspaper strip My Friend Irma, based on the radio comedy starring Marie Wilson. By the end of the decade, Lee had become dissatisfied with his career and considered quitting the field.
And how wonderful is it that he didn't?
Very wonderful.
Shit. Could you imagine a world without Stan Lee?
Oh, God. Well, now we have to.
Yeah. Fuck.
I was going to say,
Damn it.
that's where we're at now, unfortunately.
In the late 1950s, DC Comics editor Julius Schwartz revived the superhero archetype and experienced a significant success with his updated version of The Flash, and later with Super Team The Justice League of America. In response, publisher Martin Goodman assigned Lee to come up with a new superhero team. Lee's wife suggested that he experiment with stories he preferred, since he was planning on changing careers and had nothing to lose. Lee acted on that advice, giving his superheroes a flawed humanity, a change from the ideal archetypes that were typically written for preteens. Before this, most superheroes were idealistically perfect people with no serious lasting problems. Lee introduced complex naturalistic characters who could have bad tempers, fits of melancholy and vanity. They bickered amongst themselves, worried about paying their bills and impressing girlfriends, got bored, or were even sometimes physically ill.
The first superheroes Lee and artist Jack Kirby created together were the Fantastic Four, based on previous Kirby superhero team Challengers of the Unknown, published by DC Comics. The team's immediate popularity led Lee and Marvel's illustrators to produce a cavalcade of new titles. Again working with Kirby, Lee co-created the Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, and the X-Men, with Bill Everett, Daredevil, and with Steve Ditko, Doctor Strange, and Marvel's most successful character, Spider-Man, all of whom lived in a thoroughly shared universe. Lee and Kirby gathered several of their newly created characters together into the team title The Avengers, and would revive characters from the 1940s such as the Submariner and Captain America.
I love the Submariner.
Submariner's a badass.
He is. Comic historian Peter Sanderson wrote that in the 1960s, DC was the equivalent of the big Hollywood studios. After the brilliance of DC's reinvention of the superhero in the late 1950s and early 1960s, it had run into a creative drought by the decade's end. There was a new audience for comics now, and it wasn't just the little kids that traditionally had read the books. The Marvel of the 1960s was, in its own way, the counterpart of the French New Wave. Marvel was pioneering new methods of comic storytelling and characterization, addressing more serious themes, and in the process keeping and attracting readers in their teens and beyond. Moreover, among this new generation of readers were people who wanted to write or draw the comics themselves within the new style that Marvel had pioneered and push the creative envelope still further.
So, see, Stan Lee had his pen in both inks and was still like, here, let me fucking just
Which,
create that.
sometimes turns out badly.
Fucking crazy.
You don't want to dirty that well.
Totally glad he dipped in the company ink.
He did.
Yeah, he did.
No, but I was gonna say, like, it just goes to show that, like, DC at one point was the fuck on top, and it just kind of, switched.
Well, see, and it's almost like the same thing with what I was saying about how the DC cinematic universe wants to just keep doing the same thing and never change and keeps thinking that they'll have the same success. It's what they did then too. They just made all these pinnacle of perfection characters and expected everyone to always be into it.
Yeah.
Like, eventually that's gonna get tired.
Lee's revolution extended beyond the characters and storylines to the way in which comic books engaged the readership and built a sense of community between fans and creators. He introduced the practice of regularly including a credit panel on the splash page of each story, naming not just the writer and penciler, but also the inker and letterer. Regular news about Marvel staff members and upcoming storylines was presented on the Bullpen Bulletins page, which, like the letter columns that appeared in each title, was written in a friendly, chatty style. Lee remarked that his goal was for fans to think of the comics creators as friends, and considered it a mark of his success on this front that, at a time when letters to other comics publishers were typically addressed Dear Editor, letters to Marvel addressed the creators by first name, like Dear Stan and Jack. Lee recorded messages to the newly formed Merry Marvel Marching Society fan club in 1965. By 1967, the brand was well enough ensconced in popular culture that a March 3rd WBAI radio program with Lee and Kirby as guests was titled Will Success Spoil Spider-Man?
No!
Obviously not.
He's still alive and kicking.
Throughout the 1960s, Lee scripted, art directed, and edited most of Marvel's series, moderated the letters pages, wrote a monthly column called Stan's Soapbox, and wrote endless promotional copies, often signing off with his trademark motto, Excelsior, which is also the New York state motto. To maintain his workload and meet deadlines, he used a system that was used previously by various comic book studios, but due to Lee's success with it, became known as the Marvel Method. Typically, Lee would brainstorm a story with the artist and then prepare a brief synopsis rather than a full script. Based on the synopsis, the artist would fill the allotted number of pages by determining and drawing the panel-to-panel storytelling. After the artist turned in penciled pages, Lee would write the word balloons and captions and then oversee the lettering and coloring. In effect, the artists were co-plotters, whose collaborative first drafts Lee built upon.
Following Ditko's departure from Marvel in 1966, John Romita Sr. became Lee's collaborator on The Amazing Spider-Man. Within a year, it overtook Fantastic Four to become the company's top seller. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Lee and Romita's stories focused as much on the social and college lives of the characters as they did on Spider-Man's adventures. The stories became more topical, addressing issues such as the Vietnam War, political elections, and student activism. Robbie Robertson, introduced in The Amazing Spider-Man number 51, was one of the first African-American characters in comics to play a serious supporting role. In the Fantastic Four series, the lengthy run by Lee and Kirby produced many acclaimed storylines, as well as characters that had become central to Marvel, including the Inhumans and Black Panther, an African king who would be mainstream comics' first black superhero.
Fucking badass.
Fast as fuck, boy.
This reminds me, I started catching up on South Park and the one about Black Panther.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh my god, it's the first episode, isn't it?
Yeah.
The first episode of the new season.
Oh, okay. The story frequently cited as Lee and Kirby's finest achievement is the 3-part Galactus trilogy that began in Fantastic Four 48 in March of 1966, chronicling the arrival of Galactus, a cosmic giant who wanted to devour the planet, not a weird space cloud. Fucking Fox.
Fantastic Four, we're looking at you.
God damn it. Anyway.
Are you talking about the
Galactus?
the other Fantastic Four?
Yeah, the Rise of the Silver Surfer or whatever that.
Where Galactus was just this big
He's just
cloud.
this big.
I thought you were talking about the one they tried to remake with
No,
with
not,
Michael B. Jordan as what's his face?
not that
and
one.
that Miles kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not that one.
Okay.
Yeah. His herald, the Silver Surfer, was also in that. I'm just gonna redo that.
Who's Harold?
Who's Harold?
And his herald.
Harold.
And his herald, the Silver Surfer. Fantastic Four number 48 was chosen as number 24 in the 100 Greatest Marvels of All Time poll of Marvel's readers in 2001. Editor Robert Greenberger wrote in his introduction to the story that, quote, as the 4th year of the Fantastic Four came to a close, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby seemed to only be warming up. In retrospect, it was perhaps the most fertile period of any monthly title during the Marvel age, end quote. Comic historian Les Daniels noted that, quote, the mystical and metaphysical elements that took over the saga were perfectly suited to the tastes of young readers in the 1960s, end quote. And Lee soon discovered that the story was a favorite on college campuses. Lee and artist John Buscema launched the Silver Surfer series in August 1968.
The following year, Lee and Gene Colan created the Falcon Comics' first African-American superhero in Captain America number 117, which was out in September of 1969. Then in 1971, Lee indirectly helped reform the Comics Code. The U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare had asked Lee to write a comic book story about the dangers of drugs, and Lee conceived a 3-issue subplot in The Amazing Spider-Man number 96 to 98, cover dated May through July of 1971, in which Peter Parker's best friend becomes addicted to prescription drugs.
Jesus.
The Comics Code Authority refused to grant its seal because the stories depicted drug use. The anti-drug context was considered irrelevant. With Goodman's cooperation and confident that the original government request would give him credibility, Lee had the story published without the seal. The comic sold well, and Marvel won praise for its socially conscious efforts.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, because it's not like they couldn't have sold it, but it's kind of like, you know, back then having that seal of approval was everything.
That's the same thing with the Nintendo seal.
Yeah.
It's like if you didn't have that seal on a controller, it's like this isn't made by Nintendo, and that was like a real thing back in the day. It's like if it doesn't have that seal of approval from Nintendo, it's like it's not good.
You're talking about like the gold seal like on the games?
Yep. Fucking rad. I remember seeing those things and I was like, yep.
Officially licensed Nintendo product.
Exactly.
The CCA subsequently loosened the code to permit negative depictions of drugs, among other new freedoms. Lee also supported using comic books to provide some measure of social commentary about the real world, often dealing with racism and bigotry. Stan's soapbox, besides promoting an upcoming comic book project, also addressed issues of discrimination, intolerance, or prejudice. In 1972, Lee stopped writing monthly comic books to assume the role of publisher. His final issue of The Amazing Spider-Man was number 110, July 1972, and his last Fantastic Four was number 125, August 1972.
I've always wanted to just if I could go back, if I had a time machine, I wouldn't go back and kill Hitler or anything. I would go back and live when these were coming out, and be able to pick them up as they were coming out and read them.
Yeah.
Because, I know they're still making, they're making comics now still with, different story arcs and everything, but these were, the original ones, and just to be around when they actually came out would be insane to me.
Well, I mean, and there's also that certain level of charm and, magic about, the first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything is so produced now and so... not necessarily heartless.
Mainstream.
Well, not even that. It's more it's just not a lot of heart is put into that stuff. You know what I mean? It's more of a product now. You know, and I can't speak to the level of quality and the storytelling of these books now, but there's just that level of quality in the first. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Lee became a figurehead and public face for Marvel Comics. He made appearances at comic book conventions around America, lecturing at colleges and participating in panel discussions.
I'm so sad because what was it, a couple years ago that Stan Lee was coming to our Comic-Con, and being that he was as old as he was, he ended up having health issues and couldn't make it. I had paid for the whole super fan package. I was gonna meet Stan Lee and I was so excited, and then I couldn't, and I was fucking devastated. And they were like, well, no, we'll give you your money back. And I was like, I don't want my money back. I want to meet Stan.
You can have the money.
I just want to meet Stan. And I never got to, and it's a super sad.
It's a bummer, dude.
Same here. Because that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh man, if Stan Lee comes next year, I'm going to buy the package.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to meet him. And
yeah, I was devastated.
Well, it's kind of like that. I don't know, was it the same year that Leonard Nimoy came over Skype? Or was that a different year?
Think so.
Over Skype?
Yeah, he couldn't make it to Comic-Con, so he did a panel over Skype, and then shortly after that he passed away.
Yeah.
So it's like we at least got to see him, I guess, over instant messenger, but
does that
just
really
kind of that same situation there. But he was talking to us, and there was a camera where he could see us, and then we could see him, so he was just up on the screen, and there's this girl in the front row that was just like fangirl, fucking extreme. He'd say something. She was dressed up like Spock. She was just in the front row, so anytime the camera focused on whoever was asking a question to him, you could just see her sitting there, and he'd say something, and she'd just be like, oh my god, tone it down.
How would we even describe that for the people listening?
It's
she just
clutched her pearls.
Yeah, she would clutch her chest and
sigh lovingly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She swooned.
Lee and John Romita Sr. launched the Spider-Man newspaper comic strip on January 3rd, 1977. Lee's final collaboration with Jack Kirby, the Silver Surfer, The Ultimate Cosmic Experience, was published in 1978 as part of the Marvel Fireside book series, and is considered to be Marvel's first graphic novel. Lee and John Buscema produced the first issue of The Savage She-Hulk, February 1980, which introduced the female cousin of the Hulk and crafted a Silver Surfer story for Epic Illustrated #1 in spring of 1980.
She-Hulk fine as fuck, bro.
She is, dude.
She's thick as fuck.
She's thick as fuck,
bro. She can
get a Hulk smashing my ass out of the fuck, bro.
She can get the Hulk dick any day of the fucking week, dog.
But only if she wants to, because we at the Nerd Corporation are
pro-consent.
Stan moved to California in 1981 to develop Marvel's TV and movie properties. He was an executive producer for and made cameo appearances in Marvel film adaptations and other movies. He occasionally returned to comic book writing with various Silver Surfer projects, including a 1982 one-shot drawn by John Byrne, the Judgment Day graphic novel illustrated by John Buscema, and the Parable limited series drawn by French artist Mobius.
Whoa.
And the Enslavers graphic novel written with Keith Pollard. Lee was briefly president of the entire company, but soon stepped down to become publisher instead, finding that being president was too much about numbers and finance and not enough about the creative process he enjoyed.
Attaboy, Stan.
That's right.
You know damn right. Lee stepped away from regular duties at Marvel in the 1990s, though he continued to receive an annual salary of $1 million as chairman emeritus. In 1998, he and Peter Paul began a new internet-based superhero creation, production, and marketing studio, Stan Lee Media. It grew to 165 people and went public through a reverse merger structured by investment banker Stan Medley in 1999, but near the end of 2000, investigators discovered illegal stock manipulation by Paul and corporate officer Stephen Gordon. Stan Lee Media filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in February of 2001. Paul was extradited to the U.S. from Brazil and pleaded guilty to violating SEC Rule 10b-5 in connection with trading of his stock in Stan Lee Media. Lee was never implicated in the scheme.
Good.
In 2001, Lee, Gil Champion, and Arthur Lieberman formed POW, which stands for Purveyors of Wonder Entertainment, to develop film, television, and video game properties. Lee created the risque animated superhero series Stripperella for Spike TV.
That's insane. I remember Stripperella.
Yeah,
dude.
dude.
That's crazy.
Stripperella was fucking, yeah.
That's insane that it was Stan Lee. That's crazy. Following the success of Fox Studios' 2000 X-Men film and Sony's then-current Spider-Man film, Lee sued Marvel in 2002, claiming that the company was failing to pay his share of the profits for movies featuring the characters he had co-created. Because he had done so as an employee, Lee did not own them, but in the 1990s, after decades of making little money licensing them for television and film, Marvel had promised him 10% of any future profits. Lee and the company settled in 2005 for an undisclosed 7-figure amount. Holy shit.
Right?
Holy shit. That's a lot of money, dog.
Yeah.
In 2004, POW Entertainment went public. Also that year, Lee announced a superhero program that would feature former Beatle Ringo Starr as the lead character. Get out. Are you serious? Is there anything this guy didn't do?
I swear to God, dude.
Was it Blue Beetle?
Yeah, I can't. That's DC.
I know.
All my bandmates are dead. I'm very blue.
I guess I'll do some superhero work.
The super drums. Aren't they nice?
My snare will take care of you.
I'm the percussionist.
I'm the least popular Beatle.
Which is why I'm still alive.
Nobody wanted to shoot me.
Additionally, in August of that year, Lee announced the launch of Stan Lee's Sunday Comics, a short-lived subscription service hosted by comicworks.com. And that is with a K and an E in the W. Mm-hmm. That's the cool shit right there. You know you're going to a cool-ass fucking website when it does shit like that.
Right. And they spell days with a D-A-Z-E.
Exactly. Same vein. From July 2006 until September 2007, Lee hosted, co-created, executive produced, and judged the reality television game show competition Who Wants to Be a Superhero on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Do you ever watch
Yes.
Stan Lee's Superhumans? It was
Yes,
on
I
Netflix
did.
for a minute.
Yeah.
They came here.
Yeah, they
Remember
did.
that
For the
episode?
spider one.
Yeah, where they talked to the guy that worked at Utah State University, and he was developing like Spider-Man strength, like silk, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And because I remember I was watching that, and I was just on my phone, like the end credits were rolling. I was already like super hooked on the show, and then on my phone, next up I hear like Logan, Utah, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, huh? And I look up and I see the map zoom in, and I was like, what?
That's where I
Like,
live.
they were here.
That's where I live.
I'm there. I live there. But no, that show was awesome because it's like, it just showed that like not only was he, he was creating all of these amazing superheroes, but even in reality, he was still searching for superhumans. And
Yeah.
I absolutely loved that show. And I wish I would have watched this Who Wants to Be a Superhero. I assume it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yeah, well, I think the premise of that show was like people competed, and like whoever won was made a comic book. Like they made a comic
Given
book.
superpowers.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were legitimately given superpowers. They were injected.
Some didn't make it, so
They
like the
were-
runner-up would.
They were taken to a toxic waste site.
thrown into a vat, and then we saw what happened from there.
Yeah.
In March 2007, after Stan Lee Media had been purchased by Jim Nesfield, the company filed a lawsuit against Marvel Entertainment for $5 billion, claiming Lee had given his rights to several Marvel characters to Stan Lee Media in exchange for stock and a salary. In June 2007, Stan Lee Media sued Lee, his newer company POW Entertainment, and POW subsidiary QED Entertainment.
That just sounds off. Like Stan Lee sued Stan Lee.
Yeah. In 2008, Lee wrote humorous captions for the political fumetti book Stan Lee Presents Election Days, spelled D-A-Z-E. What are they really saying? In April of that year, Brighton Partners and Rainmaker Animation announced a partnership with POW to produce a CGI film series, Legion of Five. Other projects by Lee announced in the late 2000s included a line of superhero comics for Virgin Comics, a TV adaptation of the novel Hero, a foreword to Skyscraper Man by skyscraper fire safety advocate and Spider-Man fan Dan Goodwin, a partnership with Guardian Media Entertainment and the Guardian Project to create NHL superhero mascots, with the Eagle Initiative program to find new talent in the comic book field.
Wow.
So, like, that's kind of a bummer. It doesn't say how all of those other lawsuit things turned out.
Yeah.
I am just curious about Skyscraper Man.
Yeah.
Or that, what was it, Legion 5?
Legion of 5, yeah.
That's, like, just the fact that it's got Lee around it. In October 2011, Lee announced that he would partner with 1821 Comics on a multimedia imprint for children, Stan Lee's Kids Universe. A movie said addressed the lack of comic books targeted for that demographic, and that he was collaborating with the company on its futuristic graphic novel Romeo and Juliet, The War, by writer Max Work and artist Skan Srisuwan. At the 2012 San Diego Comic-Con International, Lee announced his YouTube channel Stan Lee's World of Heroes, which airs programs created by Lee, Mark Hamill, Peter David, Adrian Curry, and Bonnie Burton, among others. Lee wrote the book Zodiac, released in January of 2015, with Stuart Moore. The film Stan Lee's Annihilator, based on a Chinese prisoner-turned-superhero named Ming, and in production since 2013, was released in 2015.
It's crazy to think he's had his hands in like all kinds of things that he's done.
Yeah.
In his later career, Lee's contributions continued to expand outside the style that he helped pioneer. An example of this is his first work for DC Comics in the 2000s, launching the Just Imagine series, in which Lee reimagined the DC superheroes Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and The Flash. Manga projects involving Lee include Karakuri Doji Ultimo, a collaboration with Hiroyuki Takei, Viz Media, and Shueisha, and Hero Man, serialized in Square Enix Monthly Shonen Gangan with the Japanese company Bones. In 2011, Lee started writing a live-action musical, The Yin and Yang Battle of Tao. This period also saw a number of collaborators honor Lee for his influence in the comics industry. In 2006, Marvel commemorated Lee's 65 years with the company by publishing a series of one-shot comics starring Lee himself meeting and interacting with many of his co-creations, including Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, The Thing, Silver Surfer, and Doctor Doom.
These comics also featured short pieces by such comic creators as Josh Whedon and Fred Hembeck, as well as reprints of classic Lee-written adventures. At the 2007 Comic-Con International, Marvel Legends introduced a Stan Lee action figure, of course. You can't be cool without an action figure,
Right.
man. Can't be. The body beneath the figure's removable cloth wardrobe is a reused mold of a previously released Spider-Man action figure, with minor changes. That's even cooler.
Right.
Kamikaze Expo, Los Angeles' largest comic book convention, was rebranded as Stan Lee's Kamikaze presented by POW Entertainment in 2012. At the 2016 Comic-Con International, Lee introduced his digital graphic novel Stan Lee's God Woke, with text originally written as a poem he presented at Carnegie Hall in 1972. This guy just gets cooler and cooler every
He's such a badass.
The print book version won the 2017 Independent Publisher Book Awards Outstanding Books of the Year Independent Voice Award.
That's pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
I think it's always like it's crazy because like when you think of Stan Lee, you just think like writer and comic book creator. Like
Right.
you don't think poet, producer, like director,
Or at this point in time, playwright.
Yeah.
He did that
Yeah.
musical.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
That blows my mind. I would love to see that. And I don't really even like musicals. But
I love musicals.
if Stan Lee had a hand in it, then I'm in.
Lee and Jack Kirby appear as themselves in the Fantastic Four number 10, January 1963. The first of several appearances within the fictional Marvel universe. The two are depicted as similar to their real-world counterparts, creating comic books based on the quote-unquote real adventures of the Fantastic Four. Kirby later portrayed himself, Lee, production executive Sol Brodsky, and Lee's secretary Flo Steinberg as superheroes in What If number 11 in October 1978. What if the Marvel bullpen had become the Fantastic Four? in which Lee played the role of Mr. Fantastic. That's cool.
Excuse me, Flo.
Lee was shown in numerous cameo appearances in many Marvel titles, appearing in audiences and crowds, at many characters' ceremonies and parties. For example, he is seen hosting an old soldiers reunion in Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos number 100 in July 1972, in The Amazing Spider-Man 169, June 1977, as a bar patron in Marvel's number 3, 1994, as a bar patron in Marvel's number 3, 1994, at Karen Page's funeral in Daredevil Volume 2, number 8, June 1998, and as the priest officiating at Luke Cage and Jessica Jones' weddings in New Avengers Annual number 1, June 2006. Lee and Kirby appear as professors in Marvel Adventures Spider-Man number 19, also in 2006.
So, like, not only does he have his cameos in all of, like, Marvel's movies, but in their comic books, too.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
He appears in Generation X number 17 back in July 1996 as a circus ringmaster narrating, in lines written by himself, a story set in an abandoned circus. This characterization was revived in Marvel's flashback series of titles, cover dated July 1997, numbered -1, introducing stories about Marvel characters before they became superheroes. In Stan Lee Meets Superheroes in 2007, written by Lee, he comes into contact with some of his favorite creations.
Lee had cameo appearances in many Marvel film and television projects, including those within the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
What?
A few of these appearances are self-aware and sometimes reference Lee's involvement in the creation of certain characters. He had completed the film footage for his cameo in the upcoming 4th Avengers film prior to his death. What are your favorite Stan Lee cameos?
I really like the one, I can't remember which movie specifically it's in. I think it's in the Avengers where he's the delivery guy and he's like, got a package for Tony Stank?
That's a good one.
That's one of my favorites.
I mean, the one that stands out to me, because, you know, granted, this has been over, what, a decade of movies, roughly?
Yeah.
Has got to be that latest Spider-Man one, where he's... Was it the latest one?
Where he's on the bus?
No, I think it was the original series. But anyway, it was the one where... that's right. I think it was the Tobey Maguire one, where he's the librarian, and they go fighting through the library.
Yeah,
that's
amazing.
Garfield one.
Yeah, that's the Amazing
He's a
Spider-Man.
conductor at the school, and he's like doing a piece, and they're fighting behind him, and he can't hear them.
No, not that part. The one, it's the one...
yeah, no, it is.
That's the part.
Yeah, where he's in
him
the
and
library.
Scorpion.
Yeah, and they go through the library. And he doesn't even like know.
He's
Yeah.
got like these he's got this headset on, and he's like listening to music or conducting or something, and they're fighting behind him. And a desk almost hits him, but Spider-Man grabs it and throws it back.
Yeah, that's
right.
in the Andrew.
Like
Garfield
I love that one where he's just completely unaware of what's going on. And his characters are right behind him fighting.
Yeah, I dig it. My favorite one was, I think it was Guardians 2, where he's talking to the Watchers.
Yeah.
Where he's talking to them, like it just.
And he's like, "Is somebody gonna give me a ride home?"
Yeah. Like, where are you guys going?
I also like his cameo in the first Guardians, where I think Quill, or is it Rocket Raccoon? They're like looking through the binoculars and like, oh, there's this person. He pans up, and Stanley's like talking to like 3 different women or whatever. I really like that one too.
Another one of my favorites is the one in. I believe it's one of the Ant-Man movies where the car shrinks and he's just like, oh, 70s are catching up with me.
It's probably the second one because I haven't seen that. I don't remember it from the first one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the second one. I remember Paul Rudd talking about how they did like 6 or 7 off-the-cuff ones.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and that was one of them, and that's the one that they decided to stick with.
That's good.
And for Paul Rudd to say something like that, who's so insanely off-the-cuff as an actor, I think that's way cool.
Speaking of Paul Rudd, I have always wondered
what his dick feels like.
Well, speaking of his dick, how many takes it took? Have either of you guys... If you haven't seen the movie, you've obviously seen the clip from Wanderlust where he's in the bathroom. He finally They live. Have you seen the movie, Eddie or Derek?
I haven't seen the whole movie.
I haven't seen the movie.
Well, they're staying in this compound, I guess, where basically anything goes, and it's him and Jennifer Aniston. They move there because they're just like, we don't have to do anything here, and it's like, well, we share everything, and he's like, oh, really? And that chick that was in The Watchmen, the really attractive one, I can't remember who she is in The Watchmen, but she's in this movie, and she like wants to fuck Paul Rudd, so he finally gets to do it, and he's all nervous, and he's in the bathroom, he's like, I'm fixing to fuck yous.
Right?
Like, how many takes did he have to go through with that? Or I'm gonna put my dick
in your vag.
all up in your vag.
Malin Ackerman is her name.
Ah, yeah, okay. I was trying to think of who she played in The Watchmen. Laurie Jupiter. That's who it was. That sexual scene between her and the owl.
Mm-hmm.
It's the kind of shit I like.
Bestiality.
So I don't even have like a crazy emotional tie to this man, but that shit was so endearing. The one that I'm talking about is the cameo in the 2018 Spider-Man PS4 game, where they're sitting in the cafe. You know, it's Peter and Mary Jane, and are they eating fries?
Yeah, they're having fries.
But they're only eating fries.
Yeah, because they have their own little romantic thing.
It was so cool because they have this like kind of really almost kind of like heartbreaking banter about how like we can't. Like, it's hard to make this work. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of already a heartfelt scene. But then, you know, is it Peter that walks out first? Or it's Mary Jane? Mary Jane walks out first, and then Peter...
No, Peter walks out first.
Oh, okay. So Peter walks out first, and then it's... Mary Jane looks back, and she's referencing to someone off screen. And Stan Lee, who's, like, rendered to perfection. Absolutely. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And he's like, just remember, you guys were always my favorite. And I'm like, dude, this is so fucking cool.
Yeah,
that was such a cool cameo, dude.
That was a good one.
Lee was raised in a Jewish family. In a 2002 survey of whether or not he believed in God, he stated, quote, well, let me put it this way. Pauses. No, I'm not going to try and be clever. I really don't know. I just don't know. Which, you know, end quote. That's a really... I respect people who question everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, like he's... I have this quote. I don't really know if it's a quote, but I really like this sentiment that there is brilliance in reticence. It's talking to the person and believing that they can put things together themselves.
Oh, gotcha.
You know what I mean? So it's like that's why I really like simple stories. It's because it's like, okay, you know, this is a really good story, but you know, it leaves a lot to the imagination.
Right.
I think that's brilliant, and I feel like in a way he's kind of doing this because he's like, you know, I don't really know. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I like the way that he goes about it because it almost kind of seems like he doesn't really care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not a big deal to him.
It's just like, oh, well, I believe what I believe, and you
exactly.
believe what you believe.
I think that's really rad. From 1945 to 1947, Lee lived in the rented top floor of a brownstone in the East 90s in Manhattan. He married Joan Clayton Boocock. Oh, what an amazing name.
I was trying.
Boocock?
Then you said...
We at the Nerd Corporation are children.
Yeah. Couple bottles.
Boocock. Boo!
Boocock. He married Joan Clayton Boocock on December 5th, 1947, and in 1949, the couple bought a house in Woodmere, New York on Long Island, living there through 1952. Their daughter, Joan Celia J.C. Lee, was born in 1950. Another daughter, Jan Lee, died 3 days after delivery in 1953. God, man.
Yeah. Tragic.
This guy never looked like he carried any kind of pain at all. Like
right. He was,
like in that, I can't imagine anything worse in this life than losing a child.
Fun fact about Stan Lee's wife, she was his barber.
Really?
Stan Lee never went to a barber a day in his life. He said, I never went. Joni cut my hair.
That was really good, too. Joni cut my hair.
Joni cut my hair.
The Lees resided in the Long Island town of Hewlett Harbor, New York, from 1952 to 1980. They also owned a condominium on East 63rd Street in Manhattan from 1975 to 1980, and during the 1970s owned a vacation home in Remsenburg, New York. For their move to the West Coast in 1981, they bought a home in West Hollywood, California, previously owned by comedian Jack Benny's radio announcer Don Wilson. In September 2012, Lee underwent an operation to insert a pacemaker, which required canceling planned appearances at conventions.
On July 6, 2017, his wife of 69 years, Joan, died of complications from a stroke. She was 95 years old. In April 2018, The Hollywood Reporter published a report that claimed Lee was a victim of elder abuse. The report asserted that, among others, Kia Morgan, business manager of Lee and a memorabilia collector, had been isolating Lee from his trusted friends and associates following his wife's death to get access to Lee's wealth, estimated to be worth $50 million. In August 2018, Morgan was issued a restraining order to stay away from Lee, his daughter, or his associates for 3 years. Get that right, bitch!
Yeah.
Stay away from Stan Lee!
And 3 years turned out to be plenty of time, sadly, because yeah.
Lee died at the age of 95 at Cedars-Sinai Center in Los Angeles, California on November 12, 2018, after being rushed there in a medical emergency earlier in the day. Earlier that year, Lee revealed to the public that he had been battling pneumonia and in February was rushed to the hospital for worsening conditions at around the same time. Roy Thomas, who succeeded Lee as editor-in-chief at Marvel, had visited Lee 2 days prior to his death to discuss the upcoming book, The Stan Lee Story, and stated, quote, I think he was ready to go, but he was still talking about doing cameos. As long as he had the energy for it and didn't have to travel, Stan was always up to do more cameos. He got a kick out of doing those more than anything else, end quote.
I remember at work, I was, like, my old supervisor, Matt, you know, Matt, like, he came over and he was like, I noticed he was standing off to the side of me and, like, I was on the phone or whatever, and I get off the phone and he came over and, like, he himself came over that and told me that happened, or he told my boss, and then my boss told me. I think she was kind of just, like, relaying a message, like, oh, and by the way, Matt said to tell you that Stan Lee died, and I was just like, huh? I was like, oh, fucking okay. And then, yeah, that's when I heard about it, and then I went on my lunch break, and I had to, like, confirm it. So I was, like, going through all these articles on the internet, and, like, there it was right there. So, because, you know, there's always, like, the hoax. I was hoping it was a hoax. I was hoping to God it was a hoax, but at the same time, I was like, yeah, he was 95, like... Yeah,
it was his time to go, but even then, like, it's still... Dude, I was sad that whole day. Like, I was legit just in a bummy fucked mood. Mm-hmm. I don't know, dude. It was definitely...
I was in a boo-cock fucking mood.
Well, because we always usually talk about, you know, like, if this person goes, then that's it. And for a while it was like Robin Williams, and then he went, you know, and it's like, what was another one? Like if Jeff Goldblum goes, or there's another actor I'm trying to think of that can't remember, but it was like, but like Stan Lee was one of them, and you know what happened, and you just sort of like, wow, you don't know how to act, even though that's how you were talking about like writing earlier, you know, but when it comes right down to it, you're just like, oh fuck, and you just sit there and just don't know what to do.
You don't.
Yeah, that was really, I mean, because obviously none of us had a personal relationship with Stan Lee or any of these other people, but be that as it may,
like the effect that they made,
these people touched everyone's lives.
Yeah,
and in a very intimate way, because of course, whether they were writing it for you or not, they're so relatable that you can't help but to feel a connection to those characters because they're so easily relatable to things going on in your own life that you just have that intimate connection with them.
Absolutely, absolutely. You may not know them personally, but they in one way affected your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel like when I'm watching a show, or on the very rare occasion when I'm reading a book. Like, I just don't read very often. It's not like I don't like...
I don't know how to read good, so
it's not that I don't like reading or anything. It's just I rarely have time to like sit down and read a book or whatever. But I have all this time to watch Netflix and all that. But like when I'm watching a TV show or something like that, I just get super into characters and their stories, and like it's doubly and especially true in like the superhero stuff, So
Absolutely.
And none of us knew him personally, but on like a same note, it almost kind of felt like you did, because like each character that he made like was a piece of him and came from him.
Exactly.
So you felt like you knew everything about him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've been thinking about what I wanted to say about him, and what I kind of came down as is a popular thing to believe in is that the older that we get, the more and more we really want to we relish in the idea of leaving behind a legacy. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
A lot of people say that with their kids. A lot of people say that with, their career, achievements. For the person that I think of that has made an immense impact on not only pop culture, but people's lives in general, speaking kind of to what Derek was saying, is no one in my mind has made it more clear,
right,
that it was him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, and I don't really even have, like I said, I don't really have a crazy emotional connection to this guy. I always thought it was cool that he was doing cameos. I always thought that was a really cool thing, that in every Marvel movie he was there.
Right.
And I'm rambling at this point, but basically what I'm trying to say is that this man did so much for so many people, and his legacy, like, I saw an interview where he was talking about in 100 years from now he hopes that he's remembered, and I'm like, dude, you got way more than 100 years.
Yeah.
Way more.
Absolutely.
I mean, and really all I can really say is thank you.
Yeah.
That's really all I can say.
Absolutely. And that concludes our piece on Stan Lee. May he rest in peace, and condolences to the Lee family. As always, you can follow us on social media.
On Facebook at the Nerd Corporation, a podcast.
On Twitter and Instagram at NerdCorp Podcast.
Or you can email us at thenerdcorporation@gmail.com.
We don't have a guest to apologize to today. We wanted to thank Stan Lee for his amazing contribution to humanity.
Because of you, people had characters to relate to, root for, and look up to.
Because of your stories, the imaginations of countless human beings soared.
And it's because of you that they will continue to do so.
A monument epitomizing greatness in design. History will always remember you, Mr. Lee. For the Nerd Corporation, my name is Eddie Lyon.
I'm Derek Reese.
Cole Simper.
And I'm Nick Lewis.
Excelsior!